In the brightly lit music room of Rosewood High, the polished floors reflected the morning sun, bouncing it off the varnished instruments neatly arranged along the wall. Mr. Grant Lawson, the school's long-standing music teacher, stood in front of his students with the confident ease of someone who had once dreamed of the symphony but had settled for high school sonatas. His pressed shirt, manicured hair, and designer shoes suggested someone who cared more about image than the art he was supposed to nurture. His reputation among the students was consistent: strict, dramatic, and more often than not, cruel under the guise of teaching. He paced deliberately across the front of the class, tapping a pencil against his palm like a baton ready to conduct. "Today," he said, voice smooth like a polished stage actor, "we're going to do something different." That sentence sent a ripple of tension across the room. Everyone knew what different meant in Mr. Lawson's world. It meant someone was about to be embarrassed for the sake of a lesson. His gaze scanned the room until it landed on a girl seated at the back, nearly pressed against the wall. She was easy to miss if you didn't look hard. Thin frame, oversized hoodie, hair tucked beneath a knit cap. Her name was Zoe Santiago, 16. Recently transferred from another district, she lived in the rundown apartments adjacent to the school's football field. Most students didn't know much about her, only that she kept to herself and spoke only when called on. She didn't join clubs. She didn't stay after school. She just existed. Lawson stopped in front of the class, then turned, his eyes locking on Zoe like a spotlight zeroing in. "Miss Santiago," he called, dragging out her name with a tone that made her presence feel like a punchline. Zoe looked up slowly. Her eyes were calm, unreadable. Ever touched a violin before? A few chuckles echoed across the room. She nodded once. Yes. Lawson lifted his brows with theatrical surprise. "Well, what a delightful revelation," he said. "Why don't you come up and show us what you've got?" His sarcasm was syrupy, thick. He didn't want a performance, he wanted a performance to fail. Zoe stood, no hesitation, no hunching of the shoulders. She walked slowly to the front where Lawson handed her a school violin. She didn't fumble. She didn't ask for help. She simply took the instrument and adjusted it beneath her chin with a grace that betrayed a history far richer than her clothes or her silence suggested. The class whispered. Someone giggled. Lawson sighed, clearly prepared to end the moment with a clever remark. But before he could speak, Zoe raised the bow and played. The first note was not loud. It was delicate, soft like a whisper spoken to a sleeping child, but swelled. It grew. The room changed. The dust in the air seemed to pause in motion. Laughter died. Phones lowered. It wasn't a song from the school curriculum, not a popular piece, not something one could hum. It was personal, melancholic, an aching melody that seemed to tell a story without needing words. For 3 minutes, the music spoke. And Zoe didn't look at them, not at Lawson, not at the students, not at the world. Her body swayed gently. Her fingers moved as though guided by memory instead of sight. She wasn't performing. She was confessing, grieving, remembering. And when it ended, when the final note hung in the air like a ghost, she lowered the violin, handed it back, and returned to her seat. The room didn't clap. It didn't move. Lawson stared at the girl as though he'd never seen her before. And perhaps he hadn't. The bell rang. Students shuffled out in stunned silence. A few glanced at Zoe. None knew what to say. That afternoon, Zoe sat alone beneath the bleachers behind the football field, her hoodie pulled tight around her face, eyes focused on the dirt beneath her shoes. She didn't think about the classroom. Not really. She thought about her mother. Her mother had once told her, "Music is the house you carry inside you. When the world burns down, go live in it." It was her mother who taught her the violin. Not formally, not in studios or conservatories. On the couch, after double shifts, playing lullabies, teaching Zoe that music could say what mouths could not. But cancer didn't care for music, or memory, or legacy. When the medical bills came, they had to sell her mother's violin. It was the last gift her mother ever gave her. Zoe taught herself again in school instruments, in borrowed moments, sneaking into the music room every morning before school started. Not for praise, not for applause, For survival. That's why she played like that. Not for Lawson. For her mother. In his office, Mr. Lawson sat with his elbows on his desk, head in his hands, eyes unfocused. Zoe's name floated in his thoughts like a quiet accusation. He had mocked her. He had missed her. He had been so certain she was nobody. He opened the school files, her transfer records, emergency contacts. A note from a former teacher read, Zoe Santiago is musically gifted. She plays with a rare, intuitive brilliance. Please protect and nurture this talent. He closed his laptop, guilt pressing into his ribs like stone. The next morning, Zoe walked into the music room early, as usual. But something was different. Mr. Lawson was already there. He wasn't standing. He sat on the piano bench, his hands resting on his lap. In front of him lay a violin case. Worn, polished, wrapped in velvet. Zoe, he said, voice stripped of pretense. She paused, unsure. Can I speak to you? She nodded cautiously. He stood, opened the case. This belonged to my mother, he said. She passed a few years ago. I haven't touched it since. It deserves better than my attic. He paused. I'd like you to have it, if you want it. Her breath caught. She stepped forward, touched the case with reverence. Why? She whispered. He smiled. A real one. Soft. Regretful. Because yesterday, you reminded me what music is. And because I was wrong. So wrong. And I hope this might be a start. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She opened the case, lifted the instrument, and held it the way someone holds something sacred. That spring, Rosewood High hosted its annual spring concert. The auditorium was packed. Zoe stood on stage, alone, dressed not in anything flashy, just herself. No one laughed. No one whispered. She played, and for the second time, the world stood still. When the final note rang out, the audience rose not just for the music, but for the girl who had taught them that brilliance doesn't announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind silence, behind struggle, behind a hoodie and tired eyes. And sometimes it only takes one person listening to change everything. Mr. Lawson stepped forward after the applause died down. He didn't speak. He just bowed to her, and the audience followed. In the weeks that followed, Zoe became known but not for what people thought they saw. She was invited to perform at city events, mentored by professional musicians, even featured in a local paper. But through it all, she stayed the same. Quiet, focused, kind. When asked how she learned to play so beautifully, she always gave the same answer. My mom taught me that music isn't what you hear. It's what you feel when the world finally listens. And in that music room, once ruled by sarcasm and ego, something new grew. Humility, respect, and the sound of a violin, early in the morning, telling stories only the heart could understand.